Welcome to Straight Talk Sacred Pathway. I'm Stuart Wellborn, a British author and former therapist, and each week I sit down with Wa-Na-Nee-Che, a spiritual elder from Turtle Island, to explore the deeper truths behind healing, ceremony, and connection to Source. Right, you're 20 minutes adrift, and I don't know if we'll be able to run on or not because of Zoom, so let's crack on.
Okay, okay.
We have got a couple of people viewing other than Linda. Now, what I wanted to talk about is that a lot of people that go onto a spiritual path were not raised on that path. They found their own pathway and were, based on where they live or their family were brought up in a certain religion or faith, as you were, because you said you were raised a Catholic. Why was you raised a Catholic to start with, and what was it? When was the turning point that you went on to indigenous old paths then?
Well, I always had questions, even when I was basically a practicing Catholic, as you would say. But things didn't make sense. And I'd always find something wrong with their philosophy. But I couldn't quite put my finger on it. There was actually a Catholic priest called Father Stanislawski, who one day called me aside and he said, Dennis, he said, your indigenous way, your indigenous spirituality is far greater than any religion. And the questions that you're asking are good, he said, because you're starting to realize you're on the wrong path. And that you're getting messages that basically are telling you, and they are showing you what's wrong with the Catholic religion and what's wrong with religion in general. He said, so you need to basically listen to your visions because you're not realizing, he said, you're getting visions, not dreams. And they're showing you things. And you need to accept them. And he said, go to some of the spiritual elders when you have a question. But before you go to a question, see if you can analyze it yourself. So that's what I did. Then I went to the spiritual people, the spiritual elders, and the way they interpreted was the same way that I had interpreted it. So all they did was to reinforce my visions, and that's when I completely walked away from the church. At the time, I had graduated from high school already. And I had a lot of things happening, a lot of strange things. And the more the things happened, the more I believed in the old ways. Just like one day I was always a spotter, or I was the person that had to drive the game to my brother. So we're out hunting, and I'm walking through the woods trying to scare up a deer so that he could basically shoot it and bring it back to the house and cut it up and use it for meat. So we were sitting there. He didn't get anything that day, but we were sitting in one of his friend's house, and I sat there, and there was another guy with a pistol, and I said, "Draw," and he drew the gun and fired it point blank at me. Something grabbed my shoulders and turned me sideways. And the bullet actually went through I had like 3 layers of shirts and a pullover and a jacket. The bullet went right through all 5 of my things I was wearing, and then went into where my chest was, and the bullet came out the other side. And I'm sitting there and I'm saying, I'm shot, but I don't feel nothing. I don't feel no pain. And then I look down and I looked at my shirt at the sleeve and seen the bullet hole. Then I looked down at my other shirts and there was a bullet hole that went right through there. And my brother was giving me the strangest look. And I sat there and I pulled my shirt. The bullet hadn't touched me. I don't know where the bullet went, but when it went through all my clothes plus my t-shirt, they should have left a scar or something, but there was nothing. So something grabbed me sideways so that the bullet wouldn't enter me.
Why did you tell him to draw?
Yeah, I told one of the guys to draw, and he drew.
Yeah, but why?
I don't know. He just automatic, I guess,
All right.
out of instinct, and then but he fired. He
Is that
actually,
just that American
fired
thing
again.
that and guns that like, oh shit, it's automatic,
Yeah.
draw?
So it was kind of awakening. My first awakening actually was when I was in the hospital. I had pneumonia, and they tried to get my fever down. They put me in ice water, and then they had ice towels all over me to get the fever down. They got the fever down, but then the nurse left without taking the ice towels off, and I ended up catching double pneumonia. And the doctor came in and he said, "You better call his parents." I was kind of like in a coma, but I could hear everything. And he said, "I don't think he's going to make it." He said, "So give his mom and dad a call." So my dad came up, and when he came upstairs, I was completely well. The fever broke, everything. And I looked at him and I said, "My dad," he said, "I know you're going to be all right." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Did you feel that heat that came inside of you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "There was the energies. When I hit the door downstairs and grabbed it, I knew you were all right because they gave me a message saying he's now healed." And about 4 days later, I was out of the hospital. But I felt that light and I felt that heat. And then all of a sudden, I felt great. So things happened that showed me that I had a special connection. But it still took me a number of years to finally get in my pathway. It took a person's passing to get me completely 100% on that pathway because that individual was very close to me. And then one night before she went to work, she said, I told her, I really had a funny feeling. And I was talking to her. She said, "I have to go to work." I said, "No, you don't. I have to go to work." She went to work. She was shot and killed. It wasn't until later I realized she had taken my place. But that was a kick in the butt that got me on my pathway. I've never been off it since.
How did she take your place then?
Well, in a vision, I seen my grave, my gravestone, and I seen my name on it. And even had the date, December 19, was it 1970, 1987. And when she was killed, I had a vision and I seen my name on that gravestone, but a shadow came by and my name was wiped off. And when the shadow came back again, her name was on it. So from then on, I never questioned my visions, and I got back on my pathway.
Okay. Just back to where we started though, because my first thing was, how come you were raised Catholic in the first place?
My mom was my mom was a very strong Catholic, and I mean, I was really kind of mad at her sometimes because as a I was an altar boy, and when you went to a Catholic school, you had to go to mass every day, 5 days a week. You started off with a mass. I got mad at mom. I said, "Mom, I go to mass 5 days a week, and then you make us go to Sunday, and you make us go to mass again." Uh, uh, but she was very devout. Dad wasn't. Dad was more into the spiritual way. He was the, oh, what might as well say, the medicine man. in the family, but he loved mom, so he never brought it up. He always kept it to himself, except he shared a lot of things with me. Out of all the 9 kids, only 8 survived. My oldest brother, the first one, died of pneumonia. And then he had 5 girls, then my brother, and then another girl, and then me. But the one, he only shared things with me. And I know later on in life, I asked him, why did you focus on me? He said, of all the kids, he said, you're the only one that was spiritual. You were connected. So I knew you would understand when I told you something, you'd take it and you would basically understand it.
So the rest of your family are still Catholic then?
No, they're not really connected.
Sorry?
Although they're not really connected, but when they have a problem, I'm the youngest, and when I was the youngest, they always used to tell me what to do. And when you have 6 mothers plus your own mother, you know, a lot of influence was there. But as later years went by, whenever they had something that happened to them in a spiritual sense, Dennis, I was the one they went to.
So how many generations back does the Catholic come into your family then?
Oh, it goes back. My grandma was pretty strong. My on one side, but my grandpa wasn't. He was an alcoholic, and he believed more in the Bible than in religion. And then my grandpa on my dad's side wasn't really a strong Catholic. So again, he understood my dad quite a bit and the gift that my dad had.
Am I correct in saying you're part Ojibwa? Is it?
But,
Your tribe, is it Ojibwa or something?
well, it's supposed to be Ojibwa, but
Right.
they also call them Chippewa.
Is that on your mum or dad's side then?
And well, Chippewa, I think, was a made up, like a made up tribe because we're really Ojibwa. And I think what it may have happened when the French would pronounce Ojibwa, they say Jibwa. Well, when the English came in, Jibwa was Chippewa.
Ah.
So I think that's where the Chippewa started with that tribe. But originally, we're all Ojibwa.
And is that on your mum or dad's side?
That's no, that's my mother's side actually.
Right.
Dad's side was Lakota, and he was related to Crazy Horse.
Was he?
Yeah, way back.
That means you are then.
Yeah, well, I've had a lot of visions about Crazy Horse, and it's so funny how much jealousy there is sometimes, even among the native people. Because I was staying at this one guy's house, his name was Fast Horse, and I was on the car, and I woke up, and there was a native, an indigenous person standing in front of me, and he was talking to me, and he handed me this porcupine quill, which I thought was a belt, but it was a choker. But somebody envisioned things are a lot bigger than they really are. So he presented me with this choker. And later on, when I got up and I told the medicine man about this, he said, "Oh, he gave it to you so you would give it to me." I looked and I said, "Hell no." I said, "He gave it to me." I said, "If he wanted you to have it, he'd have came to you." I said, "So it's mine, not yours." And he was kind of upset over it. But he has to understand that, you know, I was more connected than he was. And I remember Martin Heiber was very spiritual. And pastors always kind of looked at me as a nobody. And I was flying into Rapid City, and Fast Horse and Martin Heiber were there to meet me. So Martin Heiber, as the plane was landing, he said, "There's only one medicine man on that plane." And Fast Horse thought I was bringing a guy by the name of Peters with me. And he got off the plane and he said, "Where's Richard?" I said, Richard didn't come up. I'm the only one. That was the first time he realized I was a medicine man. But Martin Heiber recognized me right away. I had a vision, and I told him I'd like to talk to Martin Heiber about it. He said, "Well, I'm heading out to Oregon." He said, "So I'm not going to be here when you come. Can I explain the vision to you?" And Martin Heiber said, "Yes." So I told him the vision. He said, "I'll wait for you. So I'll be here when you get here. I'll meet you at the airport." But my vision was so important that was the first time that Martin Bear knew how connected I was. And we were always connected with Martin. I remember I was in South Dakota. I was at by Sturgis, where they have Bear Butte. And that was the first time I went all the way to the top. I was always stopped by something, and I wouldn't go all the way up. But this day, nothing. It was clear. In fact, when I got, it was quite a climb. And when I got there, I wasn't even tired. I wasn't winded or anything. And I sat there and looking down on the valley below, and I start singing a song. And the tears just flew out of my eyes. And I said, "Why am I so emotional?" I said, so walk back down. As I walked down, Floyd, one of the other medicine people, was sitting there. He was doing a talk. And I asked, "Floyd, yeah, what do you want, Wa-Na-Nee-Che?" I said, "Have you heard anything about Martin Heiber?" "Haven't you heard?" I said, "No, he passed away last night." And that's when I finally realized I sang that song for him. And that's why I became so emotional. So, things that happen in people's life, if they're really connected, like even when the palm readers look at my hand, they said, "You're very spiritually connected. You're connected to the energies." And it's funny that people will sit there, they have their visions, but they won't believe the visions. They'll turn them into dreams. And they don't realize that they're being taught something. But you have to learn the visions, because the visions will lead you to your pathway. They will take you to a place what we call dimensions. And that's where you'll learn who you are. But your journey will usually start with a energy guide. But people don't get past the energy guide because they all of a sudden, "It's my spirit guide." No, it's only your energy guide leading you to the next step, and then to the next step. So a lot of them get caught in that first step and they don't advance.
You've talked about that before, but incidentally, this is where I was going to go anyway. What was your journey like then? Because you say quite often, I think you said quite often, it's a wolf that comes up and people think that's their spirit guide. What was your journey? I mean, after that first one, was it a wolf? Did you move on to something else? What was yours like?
I sat there and the wolf came, and the wolf said, "Follow me." So I started following him, and all of a sudden I wasn't on the ground anymore. I was floating and I was moving. And at the end of that journey, I sat there and I was on the ground. And I said, "I want to get back up there." So I started jumping. And I jumped so high, I turned into a deer. And I sat and I jumped. The next thing I know, I was on a kind of like a ridge. And I jumped as a deer and I jumped off the ridge. And as I jumped off the ridge, I turned into an eagle. But that was the first time I finally realized that I was connected with the deer, with love in my heart, and to the eagle, where I could soar. So I've been transformed into different type of eagles to show that I was a thunderbird. And I was kind of like the head of the clans. But my job was to bring peace among the clans and to basically start telling people they have to utilize their energy for the good. of the earth and all that dwell on the earth, below the earth, above the earth. So that was my first experience with a wolf on my first journey. So they took me to the deer, then they took me to the eagle. Then, as the eagle, later on, I was given a shield by an ancient elder woman. And on the shield was an eagle and a bear. And they looked at me and they gave me the shield. So that was another name that was given to me, Eagle Bear. But I've never used it.
Why not?
It wasn't time yet to share it with him.
Well, you better hurry up. You might not have that long left to use it.
And I said, if I get hungry, to become a vulture?
Okay, you're a medicine
But I'm
man.
still on my,
Oh,
I'm still on my journey. Even after, what is it? Well, I was about 40, so I sit there 40, about 20, 30, about 30 some years I've been on my journey.
so you were 40 when you fully embraced your path then?
Yeah.
That's
So,
good to know because a lot of people may be younger or whatever or think they're coming into it late. But if you're saying you were 40, like there's hope for us all then.
as soon as you get your journey, it doesn't end. It continues. And you're given more information, more information, more information. So the more information you get, the more you can do. Just like there's times when I'm sleeping, and all of a sudden, boom, there I am talking in front of a bunch of people, and I'm learning. I mean, as I talk, I'm saying, "Wow, I didn't know that." So a lot of times, you're still going to gather information as you get older, and as you start walking your pathway, you get more and more connected.
I've read lots of stuff on different cultures of people that become shaman or whatever you want to call them. And a lot of them say that part of that journey is you go through, whether that's through a vision or whatever, is a death and a rebirth. You know, the old life disappears and the new life starts. Did you go through that?
Not really, because it doesn't disappear. What it does, it is a foundation, like a library, that you can go back to and say, well, at that time, I could see this, and it led me to this. So then you use your past sometimes to help you go into the future. So you never disappear who you are, you just add to it. You add information to who you are, and it brings you more and more. Matthew? But our brain is like a computer, and something happens that all of a sudden you're plugged into something. So then it's pulled out and you can utilize it. But there's so much information in there. The only time that it plugged in is if someone asks you a question or something happens in your life. Boom, things make sense. So people have to understand that they utilize the past to help bring you into the future. That's why I've always said you go to the past to get information that you utilize in the present that'll help you go into the future. Linda's probably listening, so the message is kind of for her. She thought maybe I was explaining something that happened to me and her and myself, but it wasn't. It was a guy by the name of Chuck Gonzalez, and he's the one I was talking to. My God, he held on to me like I was his twin brother, but we were Siamese until I finally got him to a point that he was powerful enough to basically take on things himself. And once he started realizing it, he still called me for advice, but these calls went from probably 100 calls a week to maybe one every 6 months.
Who's this? I missed the lead into
His name
that.
was Chuck Gonzalez, and we got to be pretty good friends. And he was on his spiritual path, but he had so many every time something happened, he'd call me. I don't care. It was 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Wa-Na-Nee-Che! This happened to me. What am I going to do? So I had to kind of baby feed him until he finally grew up. Once he grew up, he could handle his own problems. I'm still there, if it like he's passed now, but he always knew that if he did get into trouble, he could call me, and help him through it.
As a medicine man, I'm just going off things I've read, so it's not anything from experience here, but a medicine man's supposed to go into the spirit world and, for a person that's ill and go and find things from what's bothering them. A bit like with psychotherapy, we take people into the past of the childhood for repressed memories. Have you done that kind of stuff then, where...
Well, I changed the name medicine man to spiritual advisor. And what we're able to do sometimes when I'm talking to somebody, I can see pictures. They show me what's wrong with him or her, and then they give me a solution. That's why a lot of people will say, "How'd you know that?" And I always say, "You told me." I didn't tell you. I said, "You didn't do it in a physical way. You connected to the energy, to the spiritual side of yourself, and your spiritual side, your energy, talked to me." So then I knew exactly what you were looking for, and I could lead you to the answer. So that's how it really works. If you're connected to somebody, they'll show you pictures. And it's like when we went to the lodge, this one lady panicked. As soon as we closed the door, she went berserk. "I gotta get out. I gotta go. And she was screaming. I said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, I'm going to open the door for you. But before you open the door, I want to ask you a couple of questions. Is that okay?" She said, "Okay, but hurry." I said, what are you feeling?" She said, "I'm feeling closed in. I'm feeling trapped." I said, "Do you like that feeling?" She said, "No." I said, "Would you like to get rid of it?" She said, "Yes." "Now you have a choice. You can leave or you can come face to face and cure yourself." And she looked at me in the dark and I could see her eyes and she said, "I want it cured." So I said, "Okay, then stay in." So the first door, you could tell her she was fidgeting and everything. Got to the first door. Then the second door we did. And I said, "When you were born, before you were born," I said, "you were inside your mother's womb." And I said, "Now, when you're in your womb, do you feel the tightness around your neck?" She said, "Yeah, I can feel it." And I said, "When you were in the womb, the umbilical cord wrapped around your neck and almost strangled you. That's where your fear is coming from." And I said, "The energy said they're going to take it off." "But how are they going to do that?" And then I could see the energies working on her. And she said, "How are they working it?" Her voice was clear. And she said, "Oh my God." He said, "I feel great." He said, "Thank you, Wa-Na-Nee-Che, for allowing me to see it." I said, "Well, you cured yourself. All I had to do is show you the picture of where it came from." So we end up we opened up the door and she said, hurry up, close the door." But, strange things like that happen. When the energies, that's why I always say, always give the credit to the energies because they're the ones who come and help you. If you deny the energy what they do, where's the power for you? You don't get it. They take it away from you because your ego's getting too big.
It's interesting you mentioning about the, birthing. I've forgotten his name now. I think it was Stanislav Graf. A lot of his psychotherapy is based on the fact that it's the biggest trauma that we go through, being born, because one minute you're all cozy and everything's cool, and then the next minute, well, for the next few hours you get crushed, and then poked into the light and things like that. And he says there's like 4 stages of that can affect you, including the bit where you're covered in piss and shit and blood.
It's that we forget that when we have a traumatic incident, it goes into your subconscious.
Mm.
And then that's where all the problems lie, is within your subconscious. What's the first experience that a baby has when they come out? They get slapped in the ass. So traumatic. I said, I can remember when I was born. No, you can't. We had a traumatic experience when he slapped you in the ass and in your butt. You cried and you screamed. It's just like my mom one time said, when I told her we were going to Fargo. My mom and dad were going to work in the beet fields, and the tire on the car came off. I was laying in the back of the car, and the old cars that had kind of a great big space in the back seat on top of rear window. And I explained everything to her and what had happened. She said, "Yeah, that exactly happened. But how in the hell do you remember that?" She said, "You weren't even 6 months old." But it was something traumatic. When they opened the door and that light flashed, all of a sudden it became a traumatic experience. And I remembered everything that went on around me. So when we have problems, you'll always find a problem in the subconscious. But you have to find it in the subconscious. You have to let them dig it out. And that's what the CD's so good about. The CD will take little by little out of your subconscious until your subconscious is completely clear. But it's kind of hard to tell people what you think that this will do it, because then they sit there going into the CD for the wrong reasons. The CD needs to work on its own energy level. When you're ready to see something, show it. It's just like I told people, I said, before you do the CD, ask what you want to see, where the problem lies. So that when you go in the CD, everything will focus on answering your question. But then every energy that comes to you, there's a reason. When they give you your gift, the gift is the understanding of the first level of what the problem is. The second gift is to advance you. The third gift, again, advance you even further. The fourth one, basically, again, is to gather the 3 gifts to figure out how to resolve the issue within your own subconscious.
Just for listeners and viewers, just point out that when he says CDs, talking about his guided meditation, which you can get and download if you go to humancircleoflife.com for free. You get the MP3, just fill in your details and you'll get that for free. So that's what he's referring to. But do you actually have any CDs for sale left?
I could get them.
Right.
I have to remain in England, actually.
All right. But the trouble is, not many people have CD players nowadays. Everything's MP3 or whatever.
Well, the whole idea, too, it comes down to the fact that even though they have the CD, that's why I encourage them to put together workshops. So I can start showing people how to utilize the CD correctly. Because the first time you go through it, I'll have people say, "What do you think it means?" And they're 100% off because they're thinking. They're not utilizing that first picture that comes to them. And that's what they have to do. They have to kill the mind. They have to raise their own energy, life force energy, so that they can see the issue that they're dealing with. They have to learn how to read the gifts.
Question on the CD, guided meditation. You said before you play it, you got your question or your intention.
Yeah.
Going back to how we started this about spiritual paths, could you ask something like, what is my gift, or what is my purpose in life, what is my path, those kind of questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Off tobacco, though, once you ask. Have the tobacco in your hand and ask the question.
And what do you do with the tobacco once
And you put the tobacco on Mother Earth.
Yeah, and then you play the CD.
Then you play the CD.
There we go. Okay, we've got just over a minute left. So, have you got any final thoughts? One good thing, though, I have discovered then, even if you turn up late, we still get 40
Oh,
minutes.
yeah. Yeah.
Go on.
Probably again, we have to get people and people who are listening at the broadcast, get the word out. I mean, it's your healing, not mine. And it's the responsibility of me to give you tools. By you asking questions, I can give you a shortcut on how you can find who you are. But people, it depends on people. People have to, word of mouth basically can do wonders. So we need people to get out there, word them out, and get people to start looking at the broadcast, get them to start asking the questions so they can get the answer.
Maybe people feel a bit isolated, though, because, if you're in a particular group, you may not know anybody to share it with.
You probably know one or two people, and that's how it starts. One person, two people, three people, four people, and it goes. But we're getting short on time.
Thanks for listening to Straight Talk Sacred Pathway. If you'd like to ask Wa-Na-Nee-Che a question, you can email me at stuart@realityresponsibility.com. The link will be in the description. And don't forget, you can download a powerful guided meditation for free at humancircleoflife.com.